Call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's great to see so many people. I have no remarks. Are there any additions to the agenda that anybody knows? Okay. So we're on open public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there any? No, okay. Recreation Department quarterly report.
Here I am. Thanks, guys. I guess I'm not sure what my last report was, so I'm going to kind of just touch base on what's happened in the last few months and what we're looking at doing in the next, whether or not that falls into the exact quarter. You're going to have to forgive me on that. As you guys are probably aware, the fiscal year ended June 30th, and you might be aware of that. Budget-wise, we're looking pretty good. We don't have quite final numbers yet, but we're in a pretty good spot. We had our strongest year revenue-wise. Generally, our goal is about 180,000. It looks like we brought in around a 205 in that ballpark. So pretty good there. We're real happy with that. There were some unplanned expenses, and of course, those expenses that are much higher than we anticipated when we put the budget together. Supply chain and all that fun stuff. So there's definitely some expenses there that look a little skewed in spots, but bottom line, we should be in a good spot when we get all those numbers, which will be shortly here. The pool is set to close August 28th, Sunday the 28th. We've had a really good year this year. We've had a lot of positive feedback on our seasonal staff. They've done a really nice job. Our program numbers have been extremely high. Some of the highest ones that we've had since I've been there. That's tennis, archery, diving, Nerf wars, sports camp, pool parties. Day camp has been full throughout, so much so that we actually had to increase our numbers and increase our staff by a half person, so to speak. We've sold 117 pool passes this year, which is right about where we typically are, anywhere from 110 to 130 or so. Of those 117, 94 were resident passes, 19 were non-resident, and 4 were group passes, which is something we started doing in the last couple of years for like camps and things like that operate throughout the year. We sell a large group pass, and they can bring up to 15 people a day on that pass. Our non-resident pool use has been up significantly. That's kind of been an interesting thing. Obviously, 2 years ago, there was no non-residents, and last year was probably still down a little bit from COVID related, but we were open to non-residents last year. So far this year, we've had about 140 more non-residents than last year, with 4 weeks essentially to go to this year, and then 2 next fiscal year that will wrap into these numbers. So word is out, apparently Vernon Pool is the place to be. We're going to wrap up the summer with a float-in movie. Friday night, August 26th, we're going to watch The Sandlot on the pool deck, have a little Sandlot ball game across the street beforehand. That's something new that I think will be a good time for everybody. We'll have some fun with that. Maintenance-wise this summer, mowing and line trimming has been down a bit, as you may have imagined, but that has allowed for some time to do some other things. We've been replacing trim boards and trimming back brush lines, pruning trees, fascia boards, painting sheds, painting dugouts, that type of thing that sometimes we're not able to get as much of it done when you're weed whacking all day, every day. So that's been a good thing. And just in the last couple of days, we did start some more work on the disc golf course that we had planned to do earlier in the summer, but just didn't quite happen. So we're getting going there. The fall's starting to roll in here. We held the preschool open house last week. Again, numbers are strong there. The staff's prepared and ready to go. Parents will be welcomed back into the classroom this year, so that's something that we're really happy about. So the parents can mention that. They'll be able to drop their student off, help them hang up their backpack, all that stuff that parents should be able to do that we just haven't been able to do the last few years. So we're excited about that. ASP will get started. We've got 3 really great staff members that are all employed at the elementary school as well, so they really know the kids and are able to kind of carry over that school day expectation into the after school program, and they know what makes the kids tick, so we're pretty happy there. Soccer registrations will start up the last week in August. Next week we'll be hosting the league preseason meeting here in town. We host that, and it's kind of a nice night to get to see everybody that we'll be hanging out with and playing soccer with throughout the season. The craft fair, which hasn't happened in the last 2 or 3 years, we are planning to once again hold the craft fair. And that will be December 2nd and 3rd. Vendor applications have gone out to previous vendors, and those are starting to come back in. We have 12 or 13 registered so far, and we imagine those will continue to roll in. We've got some grant work that we've been working on. The RFP for the planning grant, as you are aware, has gone out. I believe that's, any proposals are due back in within, I think it's 3 weeks. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's about where we're at on that. And we're looking at a facilities grant, with the idea being to purchase a system that allows for easier access to the pool. We are currently ADA compliant, but there's some folks that could benefit from just a slightly easier way to enter the pool, other than the ladders that we currently have or the ADA compliant, steps that we have. So we're looking at a facilities grant for that. Potentially, we do have some matching funds in our budget for it, and are looking to do a little bit of fundraising so that the matching funds can be greater, so to speak. So we'll see how that shakes out. The Conservation Commission is holding an invasive species walk in the town forest September 12th. As we're responsible for the town forest, we will go ahead and follow up on that walk with them and see where that takes us. I think that kind of gives a rough, I think that's kind of where we're at. That's all I have for you guys today.
Michael, any questions?
No question, thank you.
Jeff?
Got it.
No, thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Nope, good.
Cool.
Thank you.
You got
Very
it.
busy.
Thank you very much.
It's been, it has been.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, thank you.
thank you. Okay, approval of minutes. On August 2nd.
I move that we approve the minutes of our regular meeting Tuesday, August 2nd, as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Michael?
Aye.
Jeff?
Right.
Tom?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Motion carried. Warrant?
I move that we approve payment of the following warrant. 4T accounts payable, $81,865.75. 31S payroll, $12,313.87. And 32S payroll, $12,761.83.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Jeff? Tom?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
I'm an aye, motion carries. Town admin report.
On August 3rd, we had 4 members and myself attend an active shooter safety training instructed by Mark Anderson at the new Windham County Sheriff Department offices. It was a great training. It was well attended by other public officials. Windham Solid Waste Management District Director Bob Spencer is working on the feasibility study for a potential transfer station. He walked through the town-owned lot that would best accommodate a small facility. And we'll be touring a few more on Thursday morning. On the 11th, the treasurer and myself had a brief phone conversation with the wage and salary compensation study consultants, and so I'll be sending them some additional information, job descriptions, pay scales, and so on and so forth. And my question to the board is, would you like them to attend the next meeting if you have any questions or concerns, or like to have a discussion regarding what your expectations
So
are?
much pleasure. Michael? Jeff?
No.
No, I guess not until they have something to show.
I would ask the town administrator if there seems to be any red flags on this proposal, because there appeared that there could be a couple of areas that would be red flagged as you and the treasurer go through this with them. If you could not sign a contract until we come back to another meeting, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. I've sent out the outdoor recreation master plan RFP to over a dozen firms, and I've also heard back from a couple that are interested in putting in a proposal. On the 10th, I attended the Vermont Community Leadership Summit. There were many forums to attend addressing the many challenges facing Vermont and Vermont communities right now. it was very informative. And this last Friday, I was notified of the Route 142 closure at Miller Farm Crossing. The fire chief, emergency management director, road commissioner, and myself have been in contact with folks at V-Trans, ADA, and Frontier Railroad to be sure that there's a plan in place for emergency vehicle crossing or bypass for this construction. After many emails and phone calls, the latest information I have from Frontier Railroad noting that this project should be completed in 48 hours, Wednesday the 24th and Thursday the 25th. The crossing will be open again on Friday the 26th. I've been in contact with the state regarding the inadequate signage. And there's a conference tomorrow morning, and I'm advocating for better signage and one-lane bypass for all local traffic. So as soon as I have more information, it will be posted on the town website.
Very good, Tom.
Yeah, I have what does the fire department plan, what are their plans for anything to the north?
They're gonna lay down something for us to cross. We
Okay.
dispatch will call them.
Okay,
And they have a site person to call directly to let them know they're coming through.
okay,
So we'll get that covered.
thank you.
Any other questions?
That's all I have.
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you very much. New business, town clerk training and accommodations request. You're up, Tim.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. The annual Vermont Municipal Clerk Treasurers Association Convention is the 19th to the 21st in Fairleigh. And I've found it over the years to be very valuable both in training and in networking. And I'm requesting board permission to be there and stay over the evenings of the 19th and 20th and return late in the day on the 21st.
There's your answer.
Michael, any questions? Jeff? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to allow Tim to do that.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Somebody should have called you. That was unanimous. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Planning Commission and Economic Development Reorganization.
Hi, Select Board members. I'm Jim Pinkerton, I'm the Chair of the Planning Commission. And our job is essentially to do the homework and the legwork that's necessary to make your decisions easier. We are having a problem with the attendance at the meetings. We've lost a meeting due to a lack of a quorum already. And typically our meetings are a minimum of the quorum. We're currently configured for 7 members. Typically, there's 4 members that attend, although one of them has said that he's going to come back to give us a 5-member. And there's a couple of things. I wonder if you guys can give us some suggestions on who would be good members for our select board. The 4 core members we got right now, I'm running them to death. Every project that comes through, they're taking assignments on that, and I'm gonna burn them out, and I really don't want that to happen. So if you guys have any recommendations on who can join our board that maybe has a little more enthusiasm than some, boy, we'd really welcome that. We have an alternate selection. If we can't get 7 members, I'd like to decrease the size of the board from 7 to 5 so that we can quorum out at 3 and we won't lose our meetings. That's not my first choice. My first choice would be to fill the board, but I guess like businesses right now, it's hard to get somebody that wants to come to meetings. So any ideas, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I have just a question.
Okay.
Do you have 7 members or are there 2 vacancies?
We have 6 members.
Okay,
Just the Friday last, one of the members resigned.
okay.
But then that it looks like we got 6 people that attend. We don't. We have typically 4, and I sit there with some pretty complicated things that come through that we've run by you, and I have to assign it to the same people. And it's really not fair to them. Everybody's volunteers on this board, and I'd like to be able to spread the workload a little bit better. So any suggestions you have for somebody that might be a go-getter for the board, or we have a couple of ideas that we can broach, but
Have you reached out to Tim to put
No,
it
not
out to the
Tim.
public to
Okay.
see if anybody's interested?
yeah, that's a thought, yeah, we can do that. If a select board member would like to, join on, love to have a select board member for the input. It'd save us a lot of time in running things by you and taking them back, and running them by you and taking them back. So a select board member that can attend would be really, really nice. That's about all I have.
I used to always go to the
I
meetings.
know.
And my library board now meets then, so, and it was always helpful to have all that information. So I'm got a conflict, because I did like going to those meetings.
I wouldn't hesitate to push our normal meeting time a week off or a week shorter if it would mean you would attend.
No pressure there.
We will take that under advisement, okay? Do you have anything else for us?
No, that's it.
Okay, board, do you have any questions or comments?
I would say to just put it out there in a real attractive way of like, do you wanna have a say in the plans for this community?
And
We need
economic
you.
development, I really want to push that economic development piece. That
Yeah.
might fire up some interest, I'm hoping,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
Tim,
would just revisit that to the public.
Yeah. Okay, ARPA funds, community policing, I have a feeling that's why many of you are here.
So I'm here.
Hi, Mark. Welcome. Okay, Shelley, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Okay, so we had a suggestion to use the ARPA funds by adding some additional staffing, or actually staff hours, for our community policing. And so I wanted to open it up to the public to have some input and see what folks feel. Might fit for Vernon, or what your opinions are. If you have any questions, concerns, we have Mark here to answer questions.
Okay, so it's open to you guys. You have opinions, or, so yes, Munson.
Munson Hicks. I think it's not a good idea to use ARPA money for ongoing expenses. I think one thing that will unfortunately happen is you'll use that money for a year or two, and then the expectation will be that that will continue. There will be no money, so taxes will have to be risen in order to meet that expectation of extra police. I personally think our policing structure and seems pretty good. Nobody's ever going to be happy, but in actual fact, and maybe Mark will disagree with me, increasing the staffing seems to me will do very little to change our general crime rate, if we have one. No amount of people driving cars around are going to stop a burglary. The only thing that really gets affected, I believe, is speeding and possibly vagrancy, none of which are capital crimes. They're annoyances. So what we would be spending money that I believe should go to capital improvements, one-time expenses that we will not have expectations of being able to do, but we can do them, but we won't expect that they will cost money down the road. Anything that costs money down the road, I think, is a bad idea for the use of ARPA money. And I know at least one member of the Select Board has a tendency to agree on that.
Thank you. Joyce?
Joyce Goodnow. Well, I live on Pond Road, and you can always tell when it's after 3 o'clock, when the sheriff's department is no longer on. Because that's when the speeders come down that road, and I've seen many kids have to dodge because they're on their bikes and have to go off to the side of the road. And at nighttime, it's horrible. You hear those cars out there, they're squealing their tires, you name it. And it's usually the same people, the same cars, every evening. And we've got to do something. And I know Huckle Hill's just as bad, Tyler Hill is just as bad. We have to have some kind of patrol there at nighttime, not just during the day. So I don't care where the money comes from, but it's got to come from somewhere to get better coverage for this town before somebody does get hit.
Okay, anybody else? Yes. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Tasha Cross.
Thank
I'm
you,
actually
Tasha.
the Vernon Fire EMS captain.
That's what I'm saying.
So from my, I don't fully understand ARPA, where it comes from, but just from my point, being in emergency services, I know that having a lack of police patrol can be hard. We have a lot of mental health, unfortunately, in Vernon, and there's many times where we do get called late at night and we're on our own. And we've had many instances where it has turned a little sour, and it's concerning to us, and we can't do our job if we're in harm's way. So any way that we could get more police coverage is, I vouch for it 100% for the town's people's safety, so we can get in there and help the patient, and for our safety as responders, I fully vouch for it.
Anybody else?
I don't know if you can see beyond the little
Sandy Morrison. I guess I've got a couple of questions that would help me to understand. I share concerns about traffic on Pond Road in 5 to 7 o'clock or whatever. I hear a lot of screeching going down the road fast. And I've wondered what the hours are for the police and if there's any chance that they could not be so predictable so that people don't know they're not going to be around and feel at liberty to you know, abuse the speed limit or whatever, however you want to put it. But because I think it is a few people and I think they feel like they can get away with it. But I don't know what the hours, if they're just working days. That seems pretty crazy. It seems like it should be not predictable, you know, some days, some nights, whatever. And I'm curious, I agree with Munson that we shouldn't be spending ARPA funds for something that then we would have to pick up with tax revenue when this money runs out, and that's what would happen. But as far as a safety issue, do the state police come if it's in the middle of the night? I mean, we can't really provide coverage 24/7 for in case somebody has an issue, but I would think that, I thought there were some state police that lived in town, and I didn't know if they are possibly called or used.
Do they come, Tasha?
When they're.
What's that?
Do they come?
It really depends on the call. Unfortunately, sometimes we have, we could have a call where it's a mental health patient's being violent and they will not come. They do tend to come if it's a possible DUI that we suspect, or a pretty severe incident, but there's a lot of the times where we get told no, they're not coming. So yes and no.
And does the fire department have to respond to a mental health issue?
Yep. If we get called, yep.
Mark? You got any input?
Sure, so move from out of the corner, Mark Anderson, Wyndham County Sheriff. Is there a good spot for microphones? Or is it just here
They're all
fire?
around the table.
So in terms, well, let me back up to, I guess, a platform. Do all towns in Vermont need police? Probably not. Do everybody in the state, or does everyone in the state need access to the police 24 hours a day? And I would say yes. Now, most of you could say, I don't need the police for 364 days of the year. And then when you have someone who's in a manic crisis and they need them that one day. So to answer your question, Sandy, can we shift the hours? Sure, but then we also have the other problem, which is it's not predictable. So when we expect there to be a service available and it's not, well, why not? The contract we have with the town and that we share with other towns, we have the same discussion, and if we shift it around, then we're not there when we're needed. If we, it's just the nature of it. So we're trying to stretch effectively 24/7 coverage with only 25% of the resources to do it. So we have worked with shifting hours and personnel. Over time, we have people take vacation and whatnot, so we'll backfill. During the summertime, we actually shift the hours to accommodate the rec hours. So while normally during the school year, we're around 7 to 3, during the summertime, we do shift it later to accommodate for that. I'm always of the mindset to say, you as a town need to make the decision of what's appropriate for you. I'm not gonna come here to tell you, you need to pick this, you need to use ARPA funds. That's wholly up to you. My personal belief is that we should develop a regionalized model that provides 24/7 policing that, well, saves each person money, but also is something that you are able to rely on as a service. And it would be more accessible than what the state currently receives. Happy to answer any other questions, but I think those are the two main things that you were asking.
Munson?
So,
Go ahead,
is it all right if I talk?
Yeah, that's okay, I can't see you, so just go.
We should spend money on an I-beam.
Yeah.
So we
ARPA
could
funds?
see- ARPA funds. That's a capital improvement.
Are there times when there's someone on call? I mean, that sounds like a wonderful idea to have more of a regional people on call. I know when I was growing up, we had constables that would be on call and they would come if there was an issue or a accident or whatever. But, I mean, a regional on-call kind of thing sounds like a good.
So the devil's in the details. We don't really have a good way of doing it other than me separately contracting with 23 different entities, which becomes quickly complicated, as you can imagine. So the on-call personnel are the state police in the current construct. We're talking, this is an issue that's of immediate interest in the legislature, not because of policing, but because of accessing emergency services through dispatch. And there's 70 years worth of studies, the legislature, the state, various think tanks have looked at, all saying Vermont should regionalize the various services it provides. It helps with volunteer crises, which we've already heard of two tonight. One is accessing for a board, another is volunteers responding and not necessarily having the resources they need. So anyways, we're talking about that at the legislative level right now. There is funding that the state's put aside to do that. And I think the natural progression of the conversation will wind up with, well, now that we can call the services, what are we doing about the regionalization of those services? There's EMS districts up north that are collapsing because they just don't have people to respond. Fire departments who are starting to merge because they just don't have the members to operate a department. Windham County, we're I think more fortunate, but that said, it's not sunshines and rainbows.
Munson?
Yeah, again, this is probably the same thing. As a practical matter, if, say, we should give you a bunch more money, would you be able to find the resources of people to be able to do it? I know that there are difficulties in finding anybody to work these days, and so is it a pipe dream to say if we give you more money, you'll be able to do something?
I think
over the next 2 years.
Yeah, so I think the question would be how quickly would this plan need to come together? our hiring pipeline takes about 6 to 9 months. And while we've been very fortunate in hiring, my department specifically has been very fortunate in hiring, we're strong on staff. It's also the summertime, so if you said you wanted it tomorrow, well, we have people booked on vacations. If you said we want to double the coverage, well, now I need to find another person because that means I'm not full staff anymore. So there has to be some give and take on discussion, but a very valid point is, can we do it? And I think that would need to be weighed in with the discussion of how much are we looking for, and is there maybe even a ramp up if we did? So maybe we start with 4 hours a week until we can have the dedicated personnel, something like that. But that's about as vague of an answer as I can give you.
I appreciate it.
Martin?
You know, 6 or 7 years ago, we had a full-time police department here, 24/7, all kinds of vehicles, all kinds of weaponry. And then gradually, by several steps, we stepped down to what we have today, which I think is 40 hours. So I'm wondering, and this question, if it could be put to the sheriff, is, you know, what, aside from speeding tickets, or maybe even including speeding tickets, what has been the effect on the level of crime, the level of speeding as it's been measured with tickets, you know, specific kinds of crimes and other problems? You know, the sky doesn't seem to have fallen in, for one thing, but do we have any statistics on what has happened over that time?
We have statistics, some of them you can't follow because COVID happened and that threw everything for a loop. Generally speaking, in Vermont and nationwide, there's been a downward trend in crime, which is overall a good thing. But we've also seen an uptick in serious violent crimes. And so we've had a lot of homicides in Vermont in the last couple of years, which, and we can also at least draw some correlation to COVID and anxiety and stresses that people are facing, and substance use disorders and some other stuff. Specific to Vernon, I mean, I think that there's been an increase in motor vehicle troubles, I'll call them, whether it's speeding or doing burnouts or driving on the wrong side of the road, aggressive driving. Have we seen increase in crashes, which is usually the metric we follow? I don't think so, but I don't have that exact number right now. I still suspect that there's impaired driving that's occurring that's just going undetected. And one of the hard things is that a lot of our metrics for measuring are based on law enforcement receiving and or doing something with it. If I get a call that someone's swerving on the road, we can't call that impaired driving. So if that goes to the state police and they don't get there, then it's not going to be measured as an impaired driving stat. It's simply going to be there was a complaint about someone's operation.
What about things like break-ins and you know, those sorts of things?
So we've actually, I've been in this room before talking about break-ins, and some of the board members might even remember some of the stuff we talked about. So burglaries often occur in waves, and as we detect and ultimately identify the people involved, they're incarcerated, and then it goes away for a couple of years, and then they get out and back they come into a new community. And so there was probably about 2 or 3 years where there was no burglaries really going on, and then they started up again, and then we started investigating them, and they go to jail, and the cycle renews itself. We just had a couple burglaries begin, I don't believe in Vernon, can't remember which town, but we had a couple burglary investigations start, so there might be an uptick on that. We're anticipating, I forget the name of the acronym, but there's a federal funding for rent relief right now that is anticipated going away. And so when that happens, we also suspect that we'll see an increase in property crimes, financial crimes. We have definitely seen a significant increase in theft of catalytic converters. So that's become a multi-million-dollar theft industry. So think those are some of the things that we're paying attention to right now.
I have a question, Rita Mudd. Next week, or the week after, this crossing's gonna be closed, so everybody's gonna be going up over Huckle Hill. Is there gonna be any cops sitting there night or day checking them, because it's gonna increase tremendously?
So,
And I live on Huckle Hill.
I think it's important for me to note that we actually weren't involved in any of the communications until we actually received communication from the town. So that was last week. We've begun our strategizing of how we're going to utilize resources. I want to give credit to the town's fire chief, Chief Dunkley, who did a phenomenal job with little notice of pulling together some significant improvements for emergency response. So that's definitely a positive to ensure that services are rendered quickly as opposed to with a 40-minute detour. But the non-emergency detour is going to be roughly 40 minutes. We are looking at what parts of the community will be affected by increases in traffic and strategizing around that.
I have another question. There's a lot of four-wheelers that are on Pond Road and Huckle Hill that are not registered and stuff. And there's a dirt bike that goes up and down Huckle Hill following a black pickup truck all the time. I'm waiting for him, the black pickup truck stop, and that dirt bike goes into him. Because it happens like 3 hours a night. I don't know where they live, who they are or anything, but there was a bad motorcycle accident up on Huckle Hill a few months ago, and, you know, the S-curves are dangerous, and
Do you know what time of night that's occurring roughly?
it's usually around 8.
Okay.
But I don't know if these four-wheelers that are going up and down Pond Road are supposed to have registration or what.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
The town hasn't permitted any roads. So ATVs are only permitted with a registration to cross at a 90-degree angle. So pretty much if they're operating on the road, then it's not legal.
Yeah, every day they're on the road, going up and down Pond Road. I got into a Facebook fight with some, because a lady put out something about the what do I want to say, the rubber being burnt out in Vernon Village, and I said, well, if we had a police department that would break up their schedule, doing some night checking or riding around and stuff, that might stop it. And then I got eaten alive bad. I just had to stop.
Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Eleanor Thomas, I just want to make kind of an observation. I mean, I as a taxpayer would not be opposed to paying a little more in taxes to be able to have that security that if I called 911 in the evening, somebody would come. It's anecdotally pretty well known that state police are not coming unless it was a homicide or something really serious. Because I know they've been called for certain things and they don't come. And they're short-staffed as well, plus they cover a huge area. But I think it would be really interesting, I like numbers, if we had statistics on a regular basis about what kind of calls you're getting, you know, are tickets being done? If it's primarily speeding, you know, that's not always a life or death situation, and you do have to focus on, you know, life or death. I've experienced it too, aggressive people on the road. I mean, I've learned late in life to just kind of like, okay, let them go. But it is unnerving to people, especially with all the bicyclists that are in town, the kids that are going up and down the road. I think it's just a matter of time where some of these habitual offenders on the off hours, because they all know there's no police coverage, are going to cause an accident or worse yet, they're going to cause some sort of confrontation with another townsperson, which is may not come to a good end.
Yes.
I have one more kind of question. So I was also a dispatcher, so I know how state police works. Is there a way, because when they're on shift, each trooper gets assigned like an area of that barracks. So like there'll be a trooper assigned for like Brattleboro, Guilford, Vernon kind of area, so on and so forth. Is there a way that if the trooper's on duty, if we could bug them to be actually in their area more? Because I know that they sit at the station. I mean, I know that they do. Is there a way that they could roam, like that we could push them to roam their covered area more? Maybe that would help. I mean, and then that way they're not coming from Westminster to get down here. I mean, yes, sometimes they get here very quickly, but sometimes it'd be helpful if they were closer.
Maybe we could send them a license.
I was hoping they were gonna be here, but they're not. So.
Well, maybe we can send them a letter. Any more questions? Michael?
What would it look like to have an on-call person from the sheriff's department?
I don't know. I'm full of vague answers tonight. I mean, certainly we could try and figure something out. I'm open to being creative.
I mean, all of Wyndham County needs somebody sometimes. Why not?
And this is where I'm starting to say, let's pivot to a regional model. And I mean, Southwest Mutual Aid does have a format for what's effectively a contract model that is a shared cost. This is not the only community who's talking about these issues. And I mean, right now, if I just took the funds, not to say it's necessarily fiscally fair to every town contributing, but based on the funding that I currently receive, I could staff a 24-hour department. So to that end, financially it makes sense, but then we get to the conversation of, well, why is Vernon paying more than Guilford or whatever? And that's where the, and not to pick on Guilford, they're just nearby, but those are the conversations that we'd have to resolve and come up with a fair way to assess and develop that out. And if you want to help me come up with that model, I'm happy to work with you.
The population.
Another big thing is every time people say anything to me, I tell them, if you don't call their office, Mark doesn't know about it. So I always try to tell people call for everything. If he doesn't have records, he doesn't know about it. The same thing I do. Every time I see one of the deputies, I tell them stuff I see. They don't know. They're not here everywhere. Fortunately, a lot of times you're sitting on 142. I drive back and forth now my new job a lot, and I see one sit there for about 4 hours in one spot. So definitely need to get them out along around the roads.
I will take that back. Thank you.
I 100% agree with Munson Hicks' original position. I think most people already feel they're paying enough in taxes as it is. I don't agree that you take found money and temporarily pay for operating expenses, or even worse, increase your operating expenses temporarily. I think whatever found money we have should go towards capital improvements or economic development of some type.
Tom? I should have skipped you.
Yeah, you
Excuse
should
me,
have.
we have someone from the audience, and I don't know your name, sir.
It's Gregory Clark.
Thank you.
All right, can I jump in now?
Yep,
I just,
please do.
All right, so I originally am the person who brought the idea of using the ARPA money up. So I have a lot to say about it, but my assumption is that the select board would find out what that really takes before making a decision, like what is the cost of doing that. To me, it's like we got a problem waiting to happen, real bad. So it's fine to say that we shouldn't use the ARPA money for that, although it was encouraged to be used for that. And I don't hear many other specific ideas. We can just talk vaguely about using it for, capital improvement, anything like that. I think the number one thing that Vernon residents want, the people who aren't here today, they want to feel that they're safe at night in their house. They want to feel like someone's coming when they get the call. So to say we're not even going to try it, I think is wrong. I think we should try it, and I think that then the town should vote on it. We have a town meeting for a reason. Say you do a year, 2 years, whatever is, fair as far as bringing the staff on to cover that, and then let people decide. But as far as I understand it, we have over $600,000 in ARPA money. Again, specifically, a memo was written by the president to say that we really should, refund the police, for a lack of a better term, and we can't just let these things fall by the wayside and hope that nothing happens. You see 2 troopers come flying 90 down 142. That's the times that are here when it's like something real bad. But people have learned, well, I'm not even gonna bother to call if it's after 4 or whatever the time is, and they just say what everyone who's here is saying, well, they're just giving up, right? So that's what the town's government is for, is to help the people who don't wanna have to come to the meeting and think about it too much. They're just gonna wait for something real bad to happen and then hope that somebody comes, which I think is awful. Now, I didn't even think about the Vernon Fire Department issue, which is actually pretty disgusting that we never even thought of that. Like, we're just sending volunteers out, where people are violent. I mean, whatever the case may be. I mean, that seems dead wrong to me, just as as an outside observer. Like, I'm not a policing expert. Like, I don't want to be the guy getting pulled over, but I don't speed around town. So I'm pretty sure if, we had just evenings even, the stats would be totally different. We're saying, well, not much happens and, we don't have people, the sheriff flying around during the daytime. But if they were here at night, I guarantee you if we funded a year, you'd be funding the shift in tickets alone probably. I mean, it's ridiculous at night, honestly. People are going 90 plus down 142. I can only imagine the hill curves. And most people just say, that's just is what it is. But we don't have any economic development or anything really to speak of in that nature, because it's kind of a tough proposition. If someone's looking to move to Vernon, they go on the Vernon Facebook page, looking for a friendly welcome, and they're asking, who do I call at night if I have a problem? Oh, nobody, So, I mean, that's just crazy. So it's not up to me to find the final solution, but I just couldn't help but get involved when I saw, like, hey, this is something that's been talked about in town forever, about how, something's gotta be done for overnight public safety. And now we have a one-time opportunity, which never happens, that the federal government just says, agree or disagree. They're printing a bunch of money and saying, here you go, and here's a specific list of things you can use it for. And on the list, they made sure to clarify after, because to his credit, I sent Mr. Root this information, and we went back and forth a little bit, and he's the only person I heard back from. So, I mean, he obviously cares about it. I appreciate that. But I think, if there's one thing that people in Vernon paying taxes want, is the public safety. Now we got a chance to do it. Maybe it costs $200,000. You still got $400,000 left to go, so better start thinking up some ideas. But I got one, and in my opinion, if we don't do this one, then whatever happens in the next year that doesn't get responded to, people are gonna know now, okay, they had the chance to fix it, and then start to figure out the long-term solution, because I totally agree. Normally, we shouldn't just say, hey, we got this free money, we're gonna do, something temporary with it. But I don't think it really should be temporary. I think we should use this to get going, and then work on whatever the solution is. Maybe it is regionalization, and we're the leader in that. But, to me, as just the average resident, like, I want someone there at night, Maybe a lot of people have guns, this and that. I mean, do you really want it to come down to that if something happens at night? Some would say if we were gonna have one shift, it should be the overnight shift. But obviously you can't predict when the crime happens, so the conundrum is that no matter what hours we pick, it's not enough unless we have 24/7. Maybe we should never get rid of the police department. We obviously can't rebuild it now. There's only one solution. Troopers aren't coming, it's not even their job. They're in Burlington trying to prevent, that city from having major issues. So we gotta solve our own problems, and we need to find out from the sheriff, what's it gonna take? How much of the ARPA money do we need to spend? And then go from there. I think it's a how much, not a if we should do it or not. And I hope that everyone who's not here at this meeting will write in and express that they do agree with this. So that's all I really had. And thank you again for bringing up that part of it, because that I kind of questioned. I mean, I'm open to listening. I heard the two gentlemen speak kind of against it. A few people don't really like the idea. But now that I heard that, man, that's, that should never have been happening. So we need to fix it.
Thank you. Okay, Tom?
I have a few things. I tend to agree with Mr. Dunkley and Mr. Hicks, in as much as it's not generally good policy to take one-time money for long-term issues. Because you have to then figure out what you're going to do later. However, there are some things that I think might be able to be ARPA used without spending a lot of money. Maybe if the other towns would consider in the region putting up a little bit, 10,000, 15,000, pool that together so that we can actually do a regional study on how we could get that regional approach to work. That may make some sense. Putting $100,000 out to put extra hours on doesn't make a lot of sense, because, as you said, you never know when it's going to happen, and one cruiser in town a little bit more is not going to necessarily help that situation, nor is it going to help what's going on Hickle Hill or Tyler Hill or the other thing that we might be able to do, especially as it looks at EMS, is to perhaps again get some of the other towns to pool some money together as a pilot to bring on de-escalation experts or licensed clinical social workers to help with some of those mental health or perhaps substance abuse issues that you folks run into when you're out on a call. Maybe more than if they have some. Yeah. I was disappointed. I wasn't here when the town decided to, when VY went out and the town decided to eliminate full-time policing. There's a lot of good reasons for that, I'm sure. It's cost and other things. There are other issues going on with it at the time. I have a question for the sheriff. Do you have regular court officers? Do you have officers assigned to the court? So if our person here that's supposed to be working, and other people may know this, I don't. If they're working in Vernon 7 to 3 or 8 to 4, whatever the hours may be, but there's a court case that deals with something that happened in Vernon, is it the officer that's on duty that's expected to go to court, or do you have a court officer that presents the cases for all of the towns?
So, I was confused at what you were asking me at first, and
Yeah.
I understand the context now. So, under Vermont law, the prosecuting officer has to go to court.
Okay, so do you backfill
We do.
to make sure that the town's still covered for that? Okay. Yeah, I think there's ways to look at a regional approach, road miles, population, commercial development, square footage. There's a lot of different things that could be done. But I'm not of the mind to go out and spend $100,000 or $150,000 putting 2 more cruisers in town for a year and and then then next year not being able to do that. But I do think we could think about using some money regionally to look at a different model.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, let me let Jean speak first and then you can.
Okay.
Okay, I like your idea because the one-shot spending for coverage is really just a Band-Aid. And, you know, the next town meeting, you're gonna have to rip that Band-Aid off.
And we should.
And, so it's not a good, I agree, it's not a good use of the money, but something like planning to deal with the problem is a much better way to go, I feel. So I'm agreeing with what Tom is saying.
Kat?
I don't know if this is allowed, but could we consider reinstating some constable powers so that we do have, like, use some of that money to get constables trained to where they have the ability to respond to some of that stuff after hours?
We can add it to the list.
I don't know if that's allowed with that money, but that may be a more long-term, and it's cheaper than,
You're writing it down. Good idea, Kat, thank you.
How does that work on the law enforcement side? How much can they really do?
So the town, don't take this as the exact answer. The town has, or I forget if it's the town or the select board has the authority to allow or disallow law enforcement powers to a constable. I would strongly encourage a conversation with the leagues of cities and towns, both sides, the policy side as well as the insurance side. Part of the reason why constables have ultimately not been empowered with law enforcement powers as liability, very little administration, very little policy control, and lots of people who take on those roles who start to do things that ultimately not in the town's checkbook's interest. So not to say that constables are bad, this is not an insinuation of that, but I would certainly talk to them because it seems that weekly they're dealing with yet a new headache with regards to constables. But it's certainly possible. We work with them. Another piece to constables would be training. They'd have to go to the academy. And then a complicating factor for that is that they can either go to the full-time academy, which would be a roughly 18-week commitment, or they could go to the level 2 academy, which is roughly half in terms of hours, but takes about 6 to 12 months to complete. That's kind of more of like the part-time college model. So the hard part is getting the certification, and with a level 2 model, it requires training with a field training officer, which if the town doesn't already employ one, then most towns struggle because, well, for example, I don't want to take on the liability of training a constable with whom I know there's no policies that can control them. They're elected officials usually, so it's problematic. You could arguably say, well, what's the difference between an elected constable and an elected sheriff? I primarily do administrative work now for that reason. But we also have laws that are set up specifically towards agency heads, which constables just kind of are weird, if you want to consider how they're figuring into the modern constructs of our laws. So possible, certainly it is an affordable solution for boots on the ground, but control of it becomes the big liability problem.
I had one more question.
Okay,
Sheriff, I know it's like three-dimensional chess when you're looking at your schedule piece, but is there a way that you could mix up the hours in Vernon so they're not, as people have said here, predictable, without starting a cavalcade of issues in every other town going down the line with how you have to manipulate your schedule matrix?
So we, to a degree, we already do mix our schedule around. The schedule that is frequently spoken to was based on me making a statement in a meeting like 4 years ago. And it was, I learned afterwards that the select board didn't make that information public, so my bad. No less, We already do manipulate our
Okay.
schedule to some degree, but it is primarily a day shift that we're covering. We've talked about trying to bring in coverage at night and shifting it around. We've done that, but again, this comes back to how we also pair with the state police, and so they expect us in Vernon during certain times, and so they just know if a 911 call comes in, that's a resource that's there. So with that, we're now starting to mix up some more complicated systems that all go underneath. That's the stuff that we just manage, but it's possible.
I have a question. Why not use cameras, speed cameras?
They're not legal in Vermont.
That's a good reason.
There's
They're a good thing, though.
a variety of issues around that. I'd be happy to talk about speed cameras, but yeah, the short answer is they're not legal.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Oh,
I
I'm
just have
sorry.
a question.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately what, is it doubling the cost, or is it more than that because you need additional resources? What would it kind of look like, since I don't know that anyone else is gonna ask you kind of?
So you've heard the $100,000 number get thrown out. So we, unlike how towns will budget, we basically are a fee for service. And so what we say is, if you buy 2,000 hours, that's roughly $100,000, 90 something. If you buy under 2,000 hours, so basically a full-time person, if you buy under that, let's say about 500 hours, then that would be probably about 60 grand. So there is a discount with going to that full-time position, because then I know I'm hiring a person and I can figure out that cost, whereas if I have to break it down across multiple people, I have multiple costs weighing into that part-time capacity. I don't remember the exact hourly rates, but the town does have those, and I think.
So paying 90, we could pay 180.
48.50, that sounds right.
It is.
Okay. So we can pay a little more, now you have double the resources, there's still a little bit of time unfilled, but you could much better work with that, right? You could shift around, you could be pretty unpredictable if we doubled the coverage. We don't have to go 24/7, so to speak. We could go the next level.
There's certainly a variety of ways that we could play with a structure. And so, I mean, even let's say that a lower threshold, let's say an extra 10 hours that we just throw anywhere, just for the unpredictability you're asking for, I can probably work that out to say, okay, I'll have a part-time person who comes in for those 10 hours. And that's remarkably cheaper at $48.50 for 10 hours, so that'd be about $4,800.
But is there like a 3-hour minimum?
We actually don't have minimum set into our patrol contracts, but I mean, to my costs, we do have minimum for somebody to come work. So let's say the town goes with 8 hours a week, an extra 8 hours a week. We would probably just break that up into either 2 4-hour shifts, or we would work with surrounding towns so that they're gonna go get their regular work day, but they might be in Vernon for 4 hours and then in Marlboro for 4 hours.
So you're gonna, okay. It doesn't do much. It doesn't, in the scope of what we're looking to do, another 500 hours a year even, is about 10 hours a week. And that's not gonna solve the nighttime issues throughout the town, or the speeding issues throughout the town. You're not gonna have an extra cruiser on the road that's going to be able to do what I think people want to have done. And I think you gotta look at something full-time, which I'm not sure is affordable anymore, without the tax base that we had at one point. Or we perhaps do, the board would have to talk about this, but we ask our neighbors to look at what we did years ago with rescue and look at a regional model. It wouldn't be like rescue, but it would be different. And see if we can get folks to buy into that and see where, you know, I'm always for putting time parameters around things so we don't talk about this 3 years from now. You know, and see what happens in 90 days. What do we have something that we can bring and spend the money on, and then have 6 months to put it together and bring it to townspeople at town meeting and see if it's something they want to do.
Am I allowed to ask more questions? So, you know, it seems to me like maybe we're gonna move on and not do anything, and the Vernon Fire will keep going to these calls indefinitely alone. But to me, it's like, even if you go 24/7, which is really what I want, I was just asking, it's really good to know we could do anything, and we've never even looked into that, you know? We cut the Vernon Police Department, and then the Selectboard made a unanimous decision that they're only going this many hours.
That was the town's meeting.
Now we can-
Town meeting.
So, but it
not
hasn't come up
us.
again, so have we had a certain, my question is, have we had like a certain time contract of,
1 year, every year it comes up, it's in the budget, the town meeting. This year, nobody even questioned it.
right? So I think that's one thing, okay, well, now I know, you know, that
See you in March.
it's a negotiable thing, but I feel like it's been said for many years, like, maybe we just haven't had the right way to go about it, you know, and I understand it costs money, but not that much if we're talking, if we never even had the ARPA money. You know, we really should be thinking almost, you know, full-time about that, like, what are we gonna do in the long term? The regionalization is a great idea to come out of this discussion. Like, now we're having the discussion, but we really need to do something, you know, now. And to me, that's what the solution was about the ARPA money. I know it's not forever, you know, you could do any mixture of things, but again, I think to do nothing, it's just like, you're basically telling people like that's what it is. So for next year's budget, we really should have some sort of a plan, and I'm glad we have all this information now, but, you know, that's just, I just wanna make sure, that it gets talked about, again at some point.
Tasha?
So I just wanna, I know you said it's only 10 hours a week. It doesn't seem like a lot. Within those 10 hours, a lot could happen. Again, we don't know when emergencies happen. They are not gonna happen 7 to 3, for sure. A lot of the mental health is in the evening, in the night. There is definitely a fair share during the day. And I also, it doesn't, if it can't be 24/7, I get it. Money's tight for everybody. They don't want to pay more in taxes, but we want to be safe. And the thing with the driving 90 miles an hour at night, they know that they're not here. They know they're not around. Somebody could easily lose control of that vehicle and hit one of your family members in Vernon, and somebody could die. It's blunt, it's gruesome, I know. It could happen. We've seen head-on collisions, and they're unavoidable. I think having, even if we could adjust schedules, some way to make it so that they are, you know, maybe there's a rotating schedule, that's your deal to figure out. But if there's some way that we could get a little bit more coverage in the evening, some of that may be preventable. And I think it's super important.
Munson?
Just a quick question, Mark. On a adjusted 10 hours a week, when and where does the clock start? Where is the constable, I'm sorry, the officer turn on his clock? Is it in Newfane?
We start, so, by the way, newsflash, we're moving to Brattleboro. But no, it starts at the town line.
At the town line.
Yes, Michael.
Do you guys contract with Guilford?
We don't.
Don't?
Not for law enforcement, we do for animal control.
Okay. Can you put something together, what it would cost for both towns to do 24 hours, and we could talk to them?
Sure. haven't refreshed these numbers, but we had it figured out that it's roughly a Netflix membership for a house for a year, for a $200,000
Here's something we can get with them.
Yeah. Happy to try to come up with something. Can I offer my professional recommendation? Aside from maybe, I totally agree with you that there should be 24/7 policing. So when I say the opposite of what you're looking for right now, it's not because of a disagreement philosophy. I just don't think it will be effective. To do a 1 year, let's throw money at it, and it will, has been discussed, it will create the maybe a short-term solution, but then we have the midterm, long-term problems that we create out of it. If the town wanted to consider spending some amount of money, let's say, I mean, some of my smallest contracts are 2 hours a week. So there might be something that is more considerable or considerably tolerable for increasing, which we could help create some of the variety that it sounds like you're looking for, while we also aren't inheriting some systemic components that most people just don't see how it works. And so it just becomes more administratively burdensome. So if you wanted to add more hours to some point, even if it's just, hey, we're gonna have a couple extra shifts a month. 2 hours here, 4 hours there, it's the randomness at nighttime, and hey, maybe I won't drive around drunk. That's the perception that kind of randomness will create. You already received that to some degree from my department because we have grant funding for highway safety. How much Vernon has received or hasn't received, I don't know, but that already is occurring, it occurs countywide. But I really have to agree with Mr. Guarino. This is a problem. This is a statewide problem, and regionalization has continually been the discussion of what we should do, but nobody ever looks at how do we do it. We just accept that what the answer is regionalized. So I would strongly support and agree with, let's come together as a community to say, how do we build out a model that works for us? What's the governance of that model? Is it the sheriff who does it? Is it someone entirely different than me who does it? I mean, that's okay to have those discussions. I think I'm a logical candidate, but at the end of the day, let's build out the actual model of how to regionalize, and maybe we could even get legislative support to do that, because again, they're talking about it now. Spoken with Representative Coffey about it, and maybe that's also another conversation that we take out of this, is to be able to go and say, we are going to do something that's a long-term benefit, and the short-term stopgap is whatever the board decides.
What if you were contracted for a small amount of hours to be on call for EMS?
The hard thing with on-call is that for me to say it's accessible. So I don't have like a hopper full of people sitting back at my office that we just say, all right, tag, you're in. And so if you call and say I need help, and I say, well, I don't have anybody, then is that valuable? And maybe it is. If it's okay for that to be the answer, then maybe it is. And if I do have someone, well, yeah, we can get someone headed. So that might be another possible interim solution. I'm happy to have that conversation as well, but that is my concern, is resource availability.
Yeah, just one more thing, and I know Southwestern, you said, has some model that they're looking at. I know it's over the line, but Buckland Shelburne's looking at something right now too, and those are two pretty small towns. You may want to talk to the chief in Buckland and see what they're doing, just as an idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you all for coming and for your input. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We really did listen, and I took notes. My agenda's a mess.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I feel
Thank you.
a lot was we came here, so
Yeah.
the Guilford idea is really, I mean, that makes a lot of sense too. So, you know, I'm glad that you came. Now we can all think about it.
Absolutely. It might be worth talking to Marlboro as well. They share quite a bit of land,
Okay.
or Halifax. They all share quite a bit of land over
Over
there.
down, we're not really getting what we're looking for if you're coming from Marlboro.
You never get here from Halifax.
Yeah.
No, but it may work as a regional governance model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find geographically about roughly four towns is an appropriate model where we could have one person capable of covering the whole area, and with the populations around here, it's generally satisfactory. And if I could get multiple models of those around the county, then I now have a countywide model that if, let's say, we need 3 deputies in Vernon right now, we can pull the whole shift. So that is the model that, at least napkin math, seems to make the most sense, but a true study of how to make it all work would certainly be welcomed.
Thank you very much.
One more
Okay.
question.
Yes.
Can ARPA money could also be used for that study, basically? Is that true?
That was my suggestion,
Yeah.
that we'd have to look at the regs to see. But that may be a way to be able to jumpstart without having to look at a town meeting appropriation to do this.
My understanding is that ARPA money, pretty much you can do whatever you want to. And they're not gonna yell, once it gets above 10 million, they'll want you to actually say something about it. But it's very flexible in its use. And something that, like a study or something, is, to my understanding, completely within the realm and seems to be a very good choice.
Joyce?
How much is this study gonna cost?
And none.
I don't know. I would suggest it's probably in the $30,000 to $50,000 range.
You could put that money into the town.
And you'd use it for a year and then you wouldn't have it again.
Well, that would be
Probably.
the understanding that the people in the town would have to understand that this may not be, unless you want your taxes raised. But if you're gonna spend $50,000 on a study and then get nothing out of it, that's money down the drain.
And I may be way high on that. I'm just,
Well, even 30,000.
I mean,
You also said get other towns to help pay for that.
yeah, I wouldn't be all
A
one,
little bit from everybody.
right.
Yeah.
If they're willing to do it.
Well, if they're not, there's no reason to do the study.
That's true. That's true.
And you should know that we did have our infrastructure evaluated before ARPA, and there's a lot of things in this town that need to be fixed. They look good on the outside.
Yeah.
Yes,
And Sandy, haven't we been trying for years to get that done?
we have. We
Yeah,
have some money.
and nothing's been.
We just got that done last year, I think it was, the study. It's about this thick.
On the capital needs assessment.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
This is kind of, it's about ARPA funds. So once you get suggestions on how to use those ARPA funds, will you be sharing that so
Oh,
that we
yeah.
all kind of have a feel for where we're headed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we said at town meeting we were gonna do
We have
a public
hearing.
forum on it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is an executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and your input.
I'm trying to find a fun way to do it now.
So, the model that I want for policing,
You have something on it, because that doesn't, okay. All right, Madam Chair, I move that we enter into an executive session and ask that the Recreation Director and Town Administrator be present in regards to the appointment, employment, or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
I'm an aye, motion carries unanimously. It is 7:38. Okay, the Board of Entry executive session at 7:48, came out at 8:15, no action was taken. Upcoming meeting schedule, September 6th is the regular meeting at 6:30. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Michael? Jeff? Tom?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I'm an aye. We are adjourned at 8:16.